The Paris Opera House glittered like a jewel box, its chandeliers casting diamonds of light across marble floors as Paris's elite gathered for the annual charity gala. Celebrities, diplomats, and billionaires in designer gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos sipped champagne and exchanged air kisses, their laughter echoing through the grand halls. Near the entrance, a woman in a stunning sapphire gown stood trembling, her phone clutched in her hand. Her expected date had just canceled. In desperation, she turned to the janitor, methodically sweeping the marble floors, and whispered urgently, "Please, just pretend to be my date tonight." The janitor looked down at his worn uniform, then at her frightened eyes and nodded. As he emerged minutes later in a borrowed tuxedo, murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Isn't that the janitor?" At the center of the ballroom, a powerful billionaire froze mid-conversation, stunned as the janitor stepped into the spotlight. Marcello Rossi was 42 years old and had spent the last 8 years becoming invisible. As the janitor at the Paris Opera House, he moved through the grand building like a ghost, polishing brass, buffing marble, and ensuring that the glamorous world of opera maintained its shine. No one looked at janitors. No one saw them as people with histories, dreams, or broken hearts. But Marcello had all three. He had once been a promising pianist, studying at the Conservatoire de Paris, with professors predicting a brilliant career. Then his wife Elena had fallen ill, and medical bills had consumed everything. He'd abandoned his dreams to work 3 jobs, and when she died anyway, leaving him with their 15-year-old daughter Sophia, he'd simply kept working. The opera house job paid well enough, and there was a certain poetry in cleaning the halls where music once filled his soul. He would hum Verdi arias while polishing the floors, imagining the notes floating up to the painted ceilings. Tonight was the annual charity gala, the event he usually stayed far away from, working in the basement until the beautiful people left. But his supervisor had called in sick, leaving Marcello to handle the final preparations. Claire Beaumont stood near the grand entrance, her hands shaking as she read the text message for the 3rd time. "So sorry, emergency came up. Can't make it tonight. Antoine." She was the public relations director for a major luxury brand, and attendance at this gala with an appropriate date wasn't just expected. It was essential. Her boss had made that clear. The company's biggest clients would be here, and appearing alone would signal weakness, instability, lack of social standing. Claire had spent her entire career fighting to be taken seriously in a world that judged women by their connections and appearances more than their competence. She'd worked twice as hard as her male colleagues, only to be constantly reminded that she didn't quite belong in their exclusive circles. And now, with minutes before she had to enter that ballroom, she was alone. That's when she saw him. The janitor she'd noticed before, the one who moved with unexpected grace and sometimes hummed beautiful melodies while he worked. He was pushing a cleaning cart near the staff entrance, preparing to disappear for the evening. Something about his quiet dignity struck her. While everyone else in the building wore masks of superiority and confidence, he seemed genuinely at peace with who he was. Desperation made her bold. Claire approached him quickly, her sapphire gown rustling with each step. "Excuse me," she said breathlessly. "I know this is going to sound insane, but I need help. My date canceled, and I can't walk in there alone. Would you please, just for tonight, pretend to be my date?" Marcello looked up from his cart, startled. He saw the fear in her eyes, the vulnerability beneath her elegant exterior, and recognized something familiar. The terror of being judged and found wanting. "Madame, I don't think—" "Please," Claire interrupted. "I'll pay you. I'll explain everything, but I'm begging you, I can't face them alone." Marcello hesitated, then saw his daughter Sophia peeking around the corner. She worked part-time helping with the backstage preparations, and she was watching this exchange with wide eyes and a small smile. "Papa," she mouthed silently, giving him an encouraging nod. "D'accord," Marcello said quietly. "I will help you." 20 minutes later, Marcello emerged from the wardrobe department in a borrowed tuxedo that was slightly too large in the shoulders and an inch too short in the sleeves. But when he offered Claire his arm, there was something in his bearing, the remnant of the musician he'd once been, that made the ill-fitting clothes almost irrelevant. As they entered the ballroom together, gasps and whispers followed them like waves. "Is that the janitor?" She brought the cleaning man as her date? How desperate must she be? Claire felt her cheeks burn with shame, but Marcello squeezed her hand gently and whispered, "Breathe. You are here. You belong here." For years, Marcello had been invisible. But tonight, for one shining moment, someone had seen him. The ballroom was a sea of judgment disguised as champagne and small talk. Claire felt every stare, heard every whispered comment, but Marcello guided her through the crowd with surprising confidence. "Where did you learn to walk like that?" Claire whispered as they moved toward their assigned table. "I performed at La Scala when I was 23, Marcello replied quietly. "Walking onto a stage in front of thousands teaches you to hold your head high, even when your knees are shaking." Claire looked at him with new eyes. "You were a performer?" "A pianist." A lifetime ago, their table was mercifully positioned near the back, away from the most prominent guests. As they sat down, Claire finally allowed herself to breathe. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this," she said. "You must think I'm ridiculous." Marcello shook his head. "I think you're brave. It takes courage to ask for help." "Brave?" Claire laughed bitterly. "I'm terrified. These people have been looking down on me my entire career. I'm not from the right family, didn't go to the right schools, don't have the right connections. Tonight was supposed to prove I belonged, and instead, you proved you're human," Marcello finished, "which is more than most people in this room can claim." Claire found herself smiling despite her anxiety. There was something deeply calming about Marcello's presence. He didn't try to impress her or perform for her. He simply was. As dinner was served, they talked. Marcello told her about losing his wife Elena to cancer, about giving up his dreams to pay medical bills that couldn't save her anyway. He told her about Sophia, his brilliant daughter who wanted to study architecture, but worried about the cost. "Every morning I wake up and clean these floors, and I remember what it felt like to play music here," Marcello said, his voice distant. "But I also remember Elena's smile and Sophia's laugh, and I know I made the right choice. Some dreams matter more than others." Claire felt tears pricking her eyes. "I lost my mother when I was young. She was a seamstress. Everyone treated her like she was invisible too, like her work didn't matter because she wasn't wealthy or educated. I swore I'd never be invisible like that." "But you became something else," Marcello observed gently. "You became afraid of being seen as you truly are." The orchestra began to play, and Claire noticed Marcello's fingers tapping the rhythm perfectly on the table. Without thinking, she asked, "Do you still play?" "Only in my head," he replied. "The piano was sold long ago." The music swelled, and Claire watched Marcello's face transform. For a moment, he wasn't a janitor in a borrowed tuxedo, but the artist he'd once been, his soul responding to melodies only he could fully understand. "You should play again," Claire said impulsively. "With what time? What money? What piano?" Marcello smiled sadly. "That life is behind me." "But what if it didn't have to be?" Their conversation was interrupted by Sophia appearing at their table, her young face glowing with excitement. She was supposed to be backstage, but clearly couldn't resist checking on her father. "Papa," she whispered urgently. "You look so handsome. Is this your friend?" Marcello introduced them, and Claire was struck by the pride in his eyes when he looked at his daughter. This was what he'd sacrificed everything for, this bright, beautiful girl who looked at him like he was a hero. "Your father tells me you want to study architecture," Claire said. Sophia's eyes lit up. "Yes. I love buildings, how they stand strong and beautiful at the same time. Papa says I have to be practical, but I dream anyway." "Good," Claire replied firmly. "Never stop dreaming. The practical people will try to crush your dreams. Don't let them." As Sophia returned to her duties, Marcello looked at Claire with newfound warmth. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who would be ashamed to be seen with a janitor. Someone who would count the minutes until she could escape." He paused. "Instead, I see someone who knows what it means to fight for a place in the world." Claire reached across the table and gently straightened his crooked bow tie. "And I see someone who gave up everything for love and calls it no sacrifice at all." Marcello pulled out a worn handkerchief from his pocket. embroidered with small flowers, clearly a woman's. Elena made this, he explained. I carry it always. She said it would bring me luck. When Claire's eyes filled with tears at the gesture, the tenderness of carrying his late wife's memory so carefully, Marcello offered her the handkerchief without hesitation. Around them, the cruel whispers continued. A group of socialites at a nearby table made no effort to hide their mockery. She couldn't find a real man, so she brought the help. How embarrassing for her company. I heard he's the one who cleans the toilets. Claire felt the old shame rising, but Marcello squeezed her hand. Worth isn't measured in whispers from people who've never known real hardship. As the evening progressed, Claire realized something startling. She had unconsciously signaled the waiter to bring 3 champagne glasses, one for herself, one for Marcello, and one instinctively for Sophia, as if they were already a family. Marcello noticed too, and his eyes met hers with a mixture of surprise and something deeper, something that looked like hope. The confrontation came during the charity auction, when the evening's host stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. Adrian Moreau was everything Marcello was not. Wealthy, powerful, connected, and ruthlessly ambitious. At 50 years old, he'd built a financial empire and collected beautiful things the way other people collected stamps. For years, he'd pursued Claire with the assumption that she would eventually recognize the obvious benefit of being with him. His eyes scanned the crowd during his speech, landing on Claire's table with calculated precision. When he saw who sat beside her, his carefully maintained expression cracked with disbelief and barely concealed fury. As soon as his speech concluded, Adrian made his way directly to their table, his entourage of admirers following like a wake behind a ship. Claire, he said smoothly, though his eyes were ice, what an unexpected choice of companion this evening. Claire stood up, her chin raised defiantly. Adrian, this is Marcello Rossi. Yes, I know who he is, Adrian replied, not bothering to acknowledge Marcello directly. He cleans my office building as well. Tell me, Claire, is this some kind of social experiment? A statement about class consciousness? Or have you simply given up on maintaining your professional image? The nearby tables had gone quiet, all attention focused on the unfolding drama. Claire felt her face burning, but before she could respond, Adrian continued, I've been patient with you, Claire. I've offered you partnership, influence, connections that would transform your career. But this, he gestured dismissively at Marcello, this is beneath even my generosity. Marcello stood slowly, his borrowed tuxedo suddenly seeming less ill-fitting as he drew himself up to his full height. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried across the silent room. Monsieur Moreau, you are correct. I do clean floors, I scrub toilets, I empty trash bins. But these hands you look at with such contempt. These same hands once played Rachmaninoff at La Scala. These hands held my dying wife and promised her our daughter would have everything she needed. These hands work honestly for honest pay. The room was utterly still. You speak of what is beneath you, Marcello continued, but I wonder if you've ever built anything with your own hands. If you've ever sacrificed your dreams so someone you love could survive. If you've ever known the dignity of choosing love over ambition. Adrian's face reddened with anger. How dare you lecture me? You're nothing but... He's more of a man than you'll ever be, Claire interrupted, her voice ringing clear. She moved to stand beside Marcello, taking his hand firmly in hers. And I choose him. I choose his honesty over your influence. I choose his heart over your wealth. I choose honor over luxury. Adrian laughed cruelly. You're choosing poverty and social suicide. Do you really think your company will keep you after this embarrassment? Then they can fire me, Claire replied. But I won't spend another moment trying to impress people who measure worth in bank accounts rather than character. The crowd began to murmur. Some in support, others in shock. Phones came out, capturing every moment. This would be all over social media within minutes. That's when Marcello did something that made even Adrian step back in surprise. He knelt before Claire, right there in the middle of the ballroom, and pulled something from his pocket. A simple silver ring worn smooth with age. I have carried this since Elena died, Marcello said, his voice thick with emotion. I thought I would never have reason to offer it to anyone again. Claire, I cannot promise you wealth. I cannot promise you status or influence or any of the things these people value. But I can promise you truth. I can promise you that every day I will see you, not as a prize to be won or a connection to be made, but as the brave, kind woman who asked a janitor to be her hero for one night. Tears streamed down Claire's face. Marcello, you don't have to answer now, he continued, but know this. If I could choose my path again tonight, I would choose you. I would choose the woman who straightened my bow tie and cried over an old handkerchief. I would choose the woman who told my daughter to never stop dreaming. The ballroom had erupted in chaos. Some people gasping in romantic approval, others muttering about propriety and appropriate behavior. But Adrian stood frozen, unable to compete with the simple, devastating honesty of a janitor's proposal. This is madness, Adrian said finally, his voice strained. Claire, think about what you're throwing away. Claire looked at him, this man who had pursued her for years, who offered everything the world said she should want, and felt nothing but pity for someone who couldn't understand that love wasn't a transaction. I'm not throwing anything away, she replied. I'm finally picking up something real. She pulled Marcello to his feet and, in front of everyone, kissed him. The ballroom exploded in reactions. Applause, gasps, disapproval, delight. But Claire and Marcello heard none of it. When they finally pulled apart, Sophia had run from backstage and was hugging both of them, tears of joy streaming down her young face. Adrian turned and walked away, his humiliation complete. His entourage scattered, suddenly finding other people to talk to, other places to be. As the orchestra began to play again, and the crowd slowly returned to their conversations, Claire, Marcello, and Sophia stood together in the center of the ballroom. A janitor, a PR director, and a teenager, united against a world that said they didn't belong together. The viral video would be posted within minutes. Janitor proposes to executive at Paris Gala. Billionaire's rejection becomes love story of the year. But for the three of them, standing together while the music swelled around them, the world outside that moment didn't matter at all. The morning after the gala, Claire woke up to find her phone flooded with notifications. The video of Marcello's proposal had indeed gone viral, but not in the way she'd feared. Janitor shows Billionaire what real class looks like. Modern Cinderella story unfolds at Paris Gala. Executive chooses love over status in heartwarming scene. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of being judged for their jobs, their backgrounds, their inability to fit into elite circles. Her company called an emergency meeting, and Claire prepared herself for termination. Instead, her CEO surprised her. That video has gotten us more positive press than any campaign we've run in years, he said. You've become the face of authenticity in a world of superficiality. We'd be fools to let you go. In fact, we'd like to make you a senior director. The promotion came with a significant raise, enough that Claire immediately began making plans for how to help Marcello and Sophia. But when she arrived at Marcello's modest apartment in the 20th arrondissement that evening, she found him resistant to her offers of help. I don't want to be your charity project, he said quietly. I don't want you to fix me. That's not what this is, Claire insisted. Marcello, you gave up your dreams for survival. But what if you didn't have to anymore? What if Sophia could go to the school she deserves? What if you could play piano again? Marcello's eyes filled with tears. It's been so long. I don't know if I remember how. Then let's find out together. Over the following weeks, an unexpected transformation began. Claire used her connections to get Marcello access to practice rooms at the conservatoire. At first, his fingers were stiff, the music rough and uncertain. But gradually, the muscle memory returned, and with it, the joy he'd thought was lost forever. Sophia started attending a better school, where her architectural dreams were encouraged rather than dismissed as impractical. She thrived in ways Marcello had never imagined possible, her confidence growing daily. Claire and Marcello also started a ritual together. On Marcello's small rooftop terrace, they planted lavender in terracotta pots. Sophia's idea, because she'd read that lavender meant devotion and new beginnings. Like us, Sophia had said simply. The three of them would spend evenings on that rooftop, Marcello playing melodies on an old keyboard Claire had found at a market, Sophia doing her homework, Claire working on her laptop. It was far from the luxury of Adrienne Moreau's world, but it was infinitely richer in the ways that mattered. One evening, as the lavender began to bloom and fill the air with its soothing scent, Marcello played a piece he'd composed. It was called Claire's Theme, a melody that somehow captured both sadness and hope, loneliness and connection, loss and new love. When he finished, Sophia asked the question that had been building, "Claire, will you be my mom?" The question hung in the evening air, carried on the scent of lavender. Claire looked at this brave, brilliant girl and at the man who had sacrificed everything for her and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. "I can't replace your mother," Claire said gently, "and I won't try to. But if you'll have me, I would be honored to be part of your family. Not because I want to fix anything or save anyone, but because you've both shown me what love really looks like." Marcello reached across the small space and took Claire's hand. "If we're not ready for all the answers yet, we can wait. But my heart has already chosen." Sophia threw her arms around both of them, and for a moment, they simply held each other on that modest rooftop while Paris sparkled below them. The janitor, who had become invisible, was now the center of a viral love story. The PR director, who had felt she never belonged, had found her home. And the teenage girl who worried about dreams had learned that sometimes dreams change shape, but don't disappear. Claire started a foundation to help working-class artists pursue their dreams. Marcello became its first recipient and its most passionate advocate, giving free piano lessons to children whose families couldn't afford them. The silver ring he'd offered at the gala now sat on Claire's finger, worn with pride rather than hidden away. It wasn't a diamond. It wasn't worth thousands of euros, but it represented something that Adrienne Moreau's money could never buy. A love built on seeing and choosing each other exactly as they were. One afternoon, as they worked together in the rooftop garden, Sophia accidentally knocked over a pot of lavender. Instead of scolding her, Marcello and Claire simply laughed and replanted it together, their hands dirty with soil, their faces bright with joy. "This is what family looks like," Marcello said quietly, watching Claire teach Sophia how to pat the soil around the roots. "Not perfect, but growing together." The lavender, resilient and fragrant, would bloom again, just like them. 6 months later, Marcello's apartment had transformed, but not in the ways money could buy. The furniture was still modest, the space still small, but it was filled with music and light and love in a way it had never been when grief occupied all the room. On the old upright piano that Claire had helped him purchase, not new, but carefully restored, sat 3 pieces of handwritten sheet music. One was Marcello's original composition, dedicated to Elena, his late wife. One was Sophia's first attempt at composing, a simple melody she'd titled Our Family. And one was a duet Marcello had written for Claire, waiting for the day she learned to play alongside him. The morning of their small civil ceremony, Claire stood on the rooftop terrace, looking out at the Paris skyline as dawn painted it in shades of gold and pink. The lavender plants they'd planted together were in full bloom now, their purple flowers swaying in the gentle breeze. She wore a simple ivory dress, not the designer gown she might have worn in her old life, but something that felt authentically hers. On her finger, the silver ring caught the morning light. "Having second thoughts?" Marcello's voice came from behind her. Claire turned to find him already dressed in his suit. Not borrowed this time, but his own, purchased with his earnings from teaching piano. He looked more handsome than any billionaire in a tuxedo. "No second thoughts," Claire replied. "Just gratitude for that night at the gala, for your courage to say yes when I asked you to pretend." "We're not pretending anymore," Marcello said softly, joining her at the railing. "No, we're not." Sophia emerged onto the rooftop, carrying a small basket of lavender sprigs she'd cut for the ceremony. "Are you ready?" she asked, her eyes bright with excitement. "Everyone's waiting." Their wedding was nothing like the gala where they'd met. It was held in the community center where Marcello taught piano, with students and neighbors filling the simple chairs. There was no orchestra, just Marcello's best student playing a piece they'd learned together. There were no celebrities or billionaires, just real people who had witnessed their journey and cheered them on. When the officiant asked Claire if she took Marcello to be her husband, She looked at this man who had been invisible to the world until she needed him most and said, "I do. I choose him today and every day." When Marcello spoke his vows, his voice was steady. "Claire, you asked me to pretend to be your date, but you made me remember how to be myself. Welcome home." As they kissed, Sophia cheered loudly, and the room erupted in applause. Someone, probably one of Marcello's students, started playing La Vie en Rose on the piano, and couples began to dance. Later, as the sun set and paper lanterns were lit in the community center's small garden, Claire stood with Marcello and Sophia, watching the simple celebration around them. "Do you ever regret it?" Sophia asked Claire quietly. "Choosing us instead of all that other stuff?" Claire pulled the girl close. "I regret nothing. That other life was beautiful on the outside, but empty on the inside. This life, with your father's music, your laughter, our rooftop garden, this is real." Marcello wrapped his arms around both of them. "Family isn't where you're born or what you inherit. It's where you're chosen and choose to stay, day after day." Above them, the first stars began to appear in the Parisian sky. Somewhere in the city, Adrian Moreau was probably at another gala, surrounded by wealth and status, but not love. Somewhere, other people were measuring their worth in bank accounts and social connections. But here, in this simple moment, three people who had found each other in the most unexpected way stood together, complete. The janitor was no longer invisible. The PR director no longer needed to prove herself. And the teenager no longer had to worry about who would take care of her dreams. They had each other, and that was more than enough. Family isn't where you're born or what you inherit. It's where you're chosen and choose to stay, day after day, building something beautiful from honest work, honest love, and the courage to see worth where others see only status. For more stories where hearts rise above status, hit subscribe. The next one may touch you. Subscribe for more heartwarming stories that prove love transcends social class. Hit that bell.